This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Okay, so in this video, we are going to be breaking down my cinema camera rig and basically why I pieced together the things that I pieced together on the rig based on kind of the last 10 years of my career, learning from what I like about rigs, what I don't like about rigs, and when I went to actually build this full Komodo rig, why I purchased some of the stuff that I purchased. That's what we're talking about today. And you're gonna wanna stay till the end of the video because I'm gonna talk about a piece of kit that goes with this that is a game changer, and it's something that we'll have on set with me now for basically till the end of time, and it's something I'm never going to take out of my camera kit, so stay till the end to see what that is. So this is my red Komodo kit. I've talked about the Komodo already a couple times on the channel, so I'm not going to really break into why I chose the Komodo. I mean, it is nice that it has a box form factor, so I can kit it out much more easily compared to like my Pocket 6K. You know, I say that I feel like any camera is really not that hard to kit out. People are always complaining about form factors, but for me, if I'm gonna put a cage on it and then build it out anyways, I don't really care about the form factor. Just give me the sensor, give me a way to access the menu that's pretty easy, and then we can go from there. Which I guess is why people don't like the Pocket 6K that much, because the menu's on the back and that's kind of a bummer. Which actually leads me right into the first thing we can talk about here. So we do have the camera body, and we'll talk about the cage in a second, but let's talk about the monitor on top. So this is a SmallHD 702 Bright. It is not the touchscreen version that will control the Komodo. So I already had this monitor, and I've been debating whether I should get the touchscreen one or not. It is quite expensive. It's like almost $3,000 or something to get the full kit and the license to control the Komodo, but that would be really handy to have touchscreen control of the Komodo up here. But let's look at this real quick. Look at all these cables that I already have running off the monitor. I have a dummy battery that is running to my V mount in the back, my Anton Bauer, my gold mount in the back. I've got an SDI running to my wireless module. I've got an SDI running to my wireless transmitter, and then I have another SDI running from the camera itself. So I already have 3 cables running off of this. If I got the touchscreen monitor, I'm also gonna have another power cable that comes out the bottom here, but I don't really like the cables coming out the bottom because then they'll get in the way of things when you're moving the monitor a lot. It's not a deal breaker, but man, cables, so many cables. The one thing I did like about all the other Red cameras is that they have the wireless monitors that go on top, and that's something that if I upgrade my camera in the future, I might look into. It's kind of a bummer that the Raptor has a cable still to some degree. I kind of just like the old DSMC2 better for that reason. It is nice to be able to move your monitor somewhere else on your rig if you want to offset it or something like that. Then you got to have the cables, and that is what it is. But man, I hate cables, and look at all these cables. But that's what we're going to be dealing with today anyways. So this is a Bright monitor. It's nice. It's SDI. It's good. I just like the monitor. I like 7-inch monitors. We've talked about that before. I like them bigger so I can actually see my image as big as possible to really see what I'm recording. So 7-inch is kind of an essential. But let's talk about the cage real quick. I've talked about the cage a little bit before, but basically I have the little Timmy ribs here that goes on the Red Komodo that Red makes. It's actually made by Global Dynamic United, GDU. Those are those little Timmy ribs so you can mount things just on the body itself. But then on top of that, I have the wooden camera full Komodo kit, which gives you the 50mm rods. It gives you this riser plate here. There's actually a quick release here so the camera can pop off this whole bottom unit if you want to, which I don't do very often because then I lose my rails. But yeah, so this whole unit can come off of these bottom rails here, which is kind of fun because I can take everything with me and leave this bottom stuff here, this extra weight if I need to. And I've set this up in a way that actually works for that. Is because I'm using these top rails rather than the bottom rails to mount my follow focus, which is actually the Nucleus Nano follow focus. I wouldn't say I recommend the Nucleus Nano. It is something I have on my rig because I previously had it before I bought this rig here. So it's a very small follow focus, a remote follow focus for my camera assistant if I need to use that. I probably would prefer something bigger, and sometimes I will rent those. But for this setup, it works really well because it's kind of a small setup, and it's a very small motor on top and just has the one cable running to the power in the back to power it, which is nice. But I probably would recommend something like a Nucleus M or getting a proper follow focus if you're on a set where you need critical focus. This one kind of doesn't work sometimes. Sometimes it just kind of stops working or just interference with it. So it's not the best, I wouldn't say, but it works okay for what I do most of the time. But because all this stuff is mounted on top, then I can pull everything off this bottom and make this much lighter and just remove this from the system. Now right now I do have my cabling running through this bottom plate here. So if I wanted to do that, I knew I was gonna be doing that on set, I would probably have those cables up top rather than on the bottom. But the cage is really nice. This top plate also, this top handle here can slide forward and backwards, and you can actually put a monitor mount there instead if you don't want the handle on top. Right now I have the handle on top. which is great too. It has a big enough opening where my hand can actually grab it. I prefer that a lot. And then it has this nice 15mm iris rod on top for my monitor, so I can, you know, move the monitor up and down and tilt it however I want, which is really nice compared to some other kits where you have to actually have a second monitor mount for this. Whereas this one I can put another 15mm rod in there. I can mount a viewfinder on here if I want to, anything like that. This is really handy to have a little quick release here just to pull it off and on if I need to as well. And then I have these, you know, these airy rosettes on the bottom, and right now I have a handle mounted here. So when I'm like on an easy rig or something, I like to be able to hold on to this like this to brace myself, maybe hold on to the back of the battery to kind of have 2 points of contact. So I really like having this here. I think I'll probably add another one on this side where I kind of pull it back over here. I can grab onto it there because it's nice just to have multiple points of contact to grab and not grab your battery. Now the reason I did get the gold mount battery is for that reason. I can grab the battery and it will never come off. Like, this is not going to wiggle, it's not going to come off, the battery is not going to lose charge. Or if you have a V-mount and you pull on it too much, because it's just made out of plastic, it can come loose and then shut down your camera, and I'm not cool with that. That's why I switched to gold mount for life. It's just a more robust setup, and I just prefer over V-mount, even though V-mount is much more common, probably just because it's more affordable. Now these are kind of standard things that you would see on a camera often, but I'm going to keep going through it and talk about why I use them. I also like this back plate here from Wooden Camera because this battery plate is not mounted to the 15mm rods. It's actually going into one of the little Canon battery slots on the back. So this can move up and down freely as I need it to. And then it also is always attached to the body itself. So if I do want to pull the body from the rig, the whole thing goes with it, which is really nice. Also with my SDIs, I use these little right angle adapters to make sure that I don't have to twist them in and out like this one here. I need to get another one for this, which is just much more handy because it gives it more fluidity, more slack on the line, and then you're not ruining your cables. It's just much better to always have right angle adapters for your SDI cables, which kind of leads us into the wireless part here. Now, the Komodo has wireless built in, but I do not recommend using it. I have found it to not be super reliable. It's just a Wi-Fi thing so you can control the camera. So this is the Paralinx Ace system, which is basically the same as the Teradek Ace, but it's an SDI module. It's a little bit older of a kit. And the reason I'm using this is because I've used the Hollyland kits. I've used the cheaper kits before, and they're just have so much lag. You can't really pull focus with them, and that's not okay when I'm on a film set, on a commercial set, and I'm trying to get critical focus, and if I have lag, I might miss focus, and I'm not okay with that. So this is a little bit of an older kit, but it was only like 650 bucks on eBay, so that's why I bought it. So it's actually cheaper than a lot of the other competitors. If you actually got a brand new Teradek Ace, which is only HDMI, it's like $1,000, $1,500. This is much cheaper. That's why I got this one, but it's zero latency, and that's the most important part. It's also very small. It fits on the rig here, which is this little mount, and it just basically is a part of the package. So when it comes to actually shooting an image, you're gonna have to have your adapter for your lenses, and then also the lenses themselves. I've talked about my Mikey lenses a bunch. I've talked about my vintage and FD lenses a bunch. So I usually use those on this camera. And then depending on the project I'm shooting, I'm gonna use an RF to EF adapter, or I'm gonna use the RF speed booster adapter because I might wanna get that full frame look. So there's some caveats with that. So with these Mikey lenses, you know, they're cinema lenses, cinema house lenses, and their EF mount, and so they work really well on the adapter of the speed booster adapter, and actually any of the adapters, because they have a, you know, the back element is really flat, and it basically will work on any camera. Whereas my FDs have a little bit of problems with the speed booster because the speed booster has a lens element in it, and my FDs actually protrude out the back when you're focusing. The back element actually moves in and out when I'm using it, so sometimes it can hit that other piece of glass inside. So I have to use the FD sparingly with the speed booster. I can use it for most things because it only happens when I go to infinity focus. That's when the lens element comes out on my lenses. So for most things, you know, this is kind of like this, 3, 4 feet, 5 feet, I can use my FDs for most things, but it's when I get too far away that it becomes an issue. So something to think about if you are buying a speed booster and you want to use vintage lenses, you might want to check that first before pulling the trigger on that. But I do love the speed booster because it makes the image bigger than full frame. Just the perspective of it obviously doesn't change the sensor size. And that's just a big perk to have because this is a super 35mm camera, but if I can get the full frame look whenever I want, that's really nice. That being said, I do have this new mount in from Mikey key that they sent me, which has a few caveats, but this one is actually a drop-in ND filter. So here it's the RF-TEF mount adapter, but it has a drop-in ND system with this little wheel on it, so I can actually just have ND filters behind the lens, roll the wheel. It's basically a variable ND. Really cool to have. I do have one problem with it, and I think they might be fixing this. I've talked to them about this, so maybe your copy won't have it if you try to get this copy soon. But they might have fixed this, and I may not have fixed it. I don't know. If you've already bought your copy, you probably might have the same issue. But something's going on with the distance here with this, whereas it's making the focus markings on the lens change a little bit, which means that I think the lens is a little bit too far from the sensor, or something's going on there. So your back focus isn't exactly perfect anymore, which is kind of a bummer. So I will only use this when I know that the focus markings aren't super critical, and I just really need that kind of variable ND adapter on set for some reason. Maybe I'm on a gimbal and I'm trying to save weight, and I don't want to put another filter on the front, then I will be using that. But sometimes I won't be able to use it just if I want my markings to be accurate. Kind of unfortunate, not really the end of the world, but it is unfortunate. You want those things to always line up. Something I did forget to talk about with the cage is that I have a dovetail system here. So what that means basically is that I have this long plate here that can help me balance the camera. So if I could put my head loose here, you know, this is pretty balanced right now. It's kind of just holding itself. It's pretty tight, actually, that's probably why. But I can just undo this here, and I can slide the whole rig off the back and move, you know, and then rebalance it, right? So I can move the rig wherever I need to balance it out properly without having to move the tripod plate forward. This basically acts as a much longer, easier to use tripod plate, and it's really nice if you're even using multiple cameras, multiple tripods. You put a bunch of these little dovetails on those, and then you can just pop this off and slide it onto your next tripod very easily. It just makes it like a really nice quick release. I've used this on set forever, and this is the only way to go, in my opinion. You have to have a dovetail system. So I just have this on the regular tripod plate right now. It would be pushed down really far. It would be touching the tripod because it's so low. Whereas if you have this plate that raises it up a little bit and gets you away from that, so you can put say I want to put a big follow focus unit on here, a motor on here, this would not be touching anymore because it is far enough away from the tripod head itself, so that's nice. That's also why you have the riser here on the Komodo, is to get it higher to make it more standard. For standard cinema camera accessories, they kind of all fit the ARRI standard, which gets the lens height in the right spot and everything, and this wooden camera cage does that for me. Now a lot of this will apply to any other camera. You can buy similar parts from Wooden Camera or from Small Rig or whatever. This is actually a Small Rig handle here, and so you can make it work with any camera unit. These are just the things that I always have on my camera, because now this is kind of a complete package. I can just take this package out anytime. I never actually break down my kit. I know a lot of people break down their kit, they put it in their Pelican. I leave this kit built all the time. I strap it in my front seat when I'm going somewhere with a seat belt, and I don't ever really break it apart. But if I were to, it's pretty easy to break down. It's really just the cables that you have to deal with. Before we talk about the game-changing piece of kit that I now will have on every camera kit moving forward, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is an all-one platform to present your work online. Now, if you're building a cinema camera rig like this, I'm guessing that you're trying to do this professionally and you're trying to make money as a cinematographer or a filmmaker. And if you're doing that, you're going to need a website, and Squarespace is a great place to start to build one yourself, because you can use one of their pre-existing templates to just get going, or you can build an entire website from scratch, and they just make it super easy to do that. I personally like it a lot. I actually recently used it to build a pitch for a client. Because the tools are so easy, I was able to actually make a custom domain name for the company that I was pitching the video work for. Because they're so handy to use, I actually built my own little kind of pitch deck inside Squarespace and then just sent them a link to that web page. And what's great about that is they can look at the pitch, they can see all the numbers that I put on there, but then they can quickly just go look at my other work, and I don't have to link all that on the web page because it's already there on the website. They're using the back end of my website to view the pitch. Really, really handy, something I'm going to be doing a lot more going forward. So if you're anything like me and you need to, put yourself on the web, you can just do that with Squarespace. Click the link in the description to get 10% off, and I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So another thing I like about the Speed Booster is that I don't always have to use it. But say the widest lens I have in my kit currently is actually a 24mm cinema lens. So if I want to go wider than that from Super 35, I can just put on that Speed Booster real quick, and now that 24 becomes like an 18, and I don't have to change, find a different lens for that or buy another lens for that, I can basically just go wider, or I can just shoot the full frame look the whole time with the speed booster. And the Canon speed booster is really nice. It doesn't have any imperfections really on it that I can see, or any color casts. All it will do though is if you're using like a vintage lens and it has chromatic aberration, it will accentuate that stuff maybe a little bit. So if you have chromatic aberration, it's not that bad. It might accentuate that a little more because it is expanding everything onto the sensor. Just something to keep in mind. But for what I use it for, I'm actually really loving this setup. Okay, so now let's talk about the game-changing piece of kit that I will have forever on all of my sets now and all my camera kits. And it's something you've probably seen before, but no one really talks about it online, like literally no one. I think the problem is because the item is usually too expensive until now. Now this is something that I've had in my kit for a long time, and I just recently figured out that I could use it with my camera. So give me 1 second and I'll show you what it is. This is what they call a block battery. Now this one is made by D&O Lighting. It actually came with one of my lights that I use from D&O. It has these XLR power cables on here. These, like, I think they're 4-pin XLR power. And this is a 900 watt briefcase style battery. 900 watts. So what that means basically, let me show you real quick, is that I can put this little pigtail here on the back of my rig, and this actually plugs right into my battery plate because Wooden Camera has it included. And you can do this a bunch of different ways. You could use just a little like D-tap splitter if you're using like a Pocket 6K or something like that. You're not using red. And so now this just stays on the camera all the time. This cable right here. And so when I'm on set, I'm setting up for lighting. Sometimes it takes me an hour to light the shot on a commercial or whatever. And right now I only have these little 98 watt batteries for the back of the camera, and I have 2 of these. And those will last, a couple hours a piece maybe. So that's really only 4 hours of runtime if I only have 2 of these, and I have to keep swapping them off the charger. But with this is 900 watts, so I can simply take this little D-tap splitter that comes with the block battery. So it's plugged in here. So you've got 900 watts running into this little D-tap here. So you can run a lot of things off of this. And I've just plugged this in here. And now the camera is being powered by that big battery. So if that one's 900 watts, this is 98 watts. It's basically like having 9 of these batteries. So what I do is that I light my shot and I'm setting up, I've got everything on the tripod. Even if I'm going to go to like an easy rig or handheld or whatever, I leave this on and this powers the camera for the duration of that setup, not draining this battery at all. And then say I'm gonna go handheld or move to something else, I simply just unplug this really quick, drop it off, that battery stays there, and now this battery will now power the camera for the remainder of the shooting until I go back to a static position and I plug it back in. Basically it means you never have to swap your battery all day, which to me is a game changer. Now this has been very common on major film sets for a long time. Arri and a lot of people make these big block batteries like that for this very purpose, but they're very, very, very expensive. Whereas this one from D&O Lighting, this is not sponsored by D&O or anything like that. I just had this in my kit already. This one's only $400 on their website. So if you buy that, you can run your camera all day with no problems. So it's something if you're doing commercial work or any kind of work, and it's something I would definitely look into trying out. Now, there's different power for, every camera and everything takes a different power. So you just need to make sure all that lines up. For my use case scenario, this has been working so far and I haven't had any issues with it. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is matte boxes. So this is just a little Tilta mini matte box, and you know what? I hate it. I hate it. For my rig, I just don't really like it. I can't get my ND filters to thread on here very easily, and you have to reach in the front to grab them if you want to do a circular ND filter. Or you can use, you can just put a different ND filter right into the matte box itself, a 4x5 filter. But I don't like that either because it's not variable. Anyways, there's a lot of caveats with this. It doesn't mount very hard. It doesn't even come in the right size for my lenses. I had to buy an adapter, and that's why it doesn't mount very well. It's fine for some things if you just need a top flag, but I would not recommend this really. And actually what I think I'm gonna do, and I want you guys to let me know in the comments below, I think I'm gonna make an entire video over matte boxes because I have not bought a proper matte box yet for my camera, and I just haven't found the perfect one for my system. There's just too many variables at stake here when it comes to money versus what you actually get. And so I'm gonna probably just make a whole video over that. Let me know in the comments below if you wanna see that, and I will make that video. And if you have any other questions over anything on my rig here, feel free to also comment that below and I will answer that the best I can.